Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're hailing from. Welcome to OpenShift.tv. I am Chris Short, Principal Technical Marketing Manager on the OpenShift team at Red Hat. I am joined today for a very special new program that we're starting up here on OpenShift TV called the Level Up Hour. And this is actually led by my coworker and co-teammate, teammate, Langdon White. Langdon, please introduce yourself for everybody.
Hi, everybody. I'm Langdon White. I hail from actually dev advocacy originally at Red Hat, and then I went over to engineering for a while in RHEL land and worked heavily on the modularity and AppStream projects. And then now I have come to the cloud platforms TMM, or the Technical Marketing Manager team. And I'm here to talk a little bit about why, RHEL people want to use containers and why they are a lot less, or they can be super useful as just a, like an admin or even a developer, even without, kind of needing just to make your life kind of easier. And it'd be nice if I could talk this morning. Apparently, I need more coffee. You know, so this show is on the wrong slide, but there
That's
you go.
fine. It's
Yeah,
totally
yeah.
fine. We embrace mistakes on this channel. It's totally fine.
Exactly. At least it's a soft launch for our first show.
Yeah.
So we're starting this new show basically explicitly to talk to kind of RHEL admins about why containers are useful and how they can kind of simplify your life. And so today we're going to talk about kind of how to get some tools to your data center machines without having to install things locally, which is kind of a handy feature. As I've talked about in the past, I've worked a little bit as a sysadmin, and the environment I worked in was, as I think the technical term is, janky. And so the organization was in the middle of doing a mass migration, and those always take longer than everyone expects. So it was keep the lights on the existing both bare metal and virtualized environment while we build out a new one. And that environment had, by some previous admin, had Nagios deployed, but nothing else. And so I wanted to maintain those machines in sort of an automatic way. And so I was investigating Puppet at the time. This was a bunch of years ago. And was like, I'm not installing a Puppet agent on those machines. They frighten me. And anything installed may make them never come back again.
Right.
So I wrote a whole mess of Nagios checks that actually did config management. I'm very, very sad that I MIA'd the source code somewhere. I probably could have convinced them to open source it, but it didn't even cross my mind that it might be useful to anyone else. But that's kind of the idea for this talk, or for this kind of series. How can we use containers to our advantage as like an admin, especially where you either don't want to or can't touch kind of the setup that's on the actual machines that you have to manage. So that's kind of the idea. And we'll get to it at the end, but the program, there's actually a full program around this, and that
Yes.
program has some support for taking classes and of basically being able to take some of the tests, and hopefully more stuff to come, so that you can kind of, as it's called, right, level up, right, is how do you add containers to your toolkit as a RHEL admin, and both take advantage of that as an admin and just make your life easier, but then on top of that actually make you more uh, valuable to potential employers. So that's kind of the idea behind the show, and hopefully we'll get some comments and some questions as we go along. Unfortunately, I don't have the comments up, but
Well, just head over to twitch.tv/Red Hat OpenShift, and
I should see them
you
there.
could even switch to moderator mode if you wanted.
True.
If you so desired. But I can handle all the moderator in chat, but I'm sure you want to see it too.
Yeah,
so
it does
we're
help.
joined today by a few of our friends, Narendev and excuse me, Sysos Master. Welcome everyone joining again. So yeah, like this is an interesting like concept and show for me because like I started off as a RHEL admin, right? Like back in the day before it was RHEL, it was Red Hat Linux, and I was administering those kinds of systems. And then joined the Air Force, used Red Hat a bunch, and then got out of the Air Force and joined a company that was using Red Hat. At the time, it was RHEL 3, and they were transitioning to 5, but 6 was already out. Yeah, just to give you an idea of where I learned, yeah, my RHEL chops. So yeah, I got an RHCSA certification back in like 2011, 2012, I think. And then what was it, 2 years ago, I got my Ansible certification. So this is like helping me go from that 20 something 30 something year old RHCSA up to where I am now, right? Like working with containers on a daily basis kind of thing. So yep, the level up hour, that's what we're talking about. So
Exactly.
I fully think that Linux, Ansible, and Kubernetes have been 3 of the biggest projects that have impacted my life and my career. So I want to make sure that folks realize the transition is natural, right? Like I did it. A lot of people have done it.
Yeah, and my vast experience with Red Hat Enterprise Linux and Red Hat Linux was as I spent a lot of time in consulting, both freelance and working for companies, and I used to use Red Hat as a way to get my clients off my back by developing an application or whatever, and then deploying it on RHEL and saying, "Hey, call Red Hat if you have challenges with the operating system," because they were basically the only ones who were really offering real like material support. And I knew the vast majority of questions would then go to their paid support rather than calling me, as you do as a consultant. Part of the reason for the appeal of consulting is you never want to work on the same project for very long. So I used to use it a ton as a result. I actually switched over to Linux entirely. I don't know, in like 2005 maybe,
Wow,
as
nice.
my like exclusive operating system, because I just actually the reason I did it is because I was like, I'm deploying to all these Linux machines, and I really need to be much more comfortable working with them directly. So I just switched all my laptops and kind of never looked back. And it's
That's the way to do it, man. Pull off the Band-Aid, go.
yeah, exactly. And I really can't use anything else anymore. I have a very hard time using Windows or Mac anymore. It's kind of interesting. All right, so that's the intro. I don't know if there's any. I do have the comments open now.
Cool.
But
Nah,
I don't have
there's no
anything really.
questions other than TLUH, the level up hour, right? That's the abbreviation. It's a bot command that mods and admins can run. So if you want to learn more, there's the link to hit up. If you want to listen to us and read over that page while we go, that'd be great.
Yeah. Oh, and also in the future for the show, I just kind of saw the guest comment or whatever. We do want to have kind of guests on the show,
Yes.
using who might be relevant to this particular topic. One I already have hopefully lined up soon. We'll be talking about Toolbox, which we'll get to in a later episode.
Yes.
But let's jump
Let's
into
dive
it.
into let's jump into today's content.
And let's see, share screen buttons.
You're already sharing.
I know, but I want to share the different.
Oh, you have to share a different one. Oh, the
Yes,
screen sharery begins.
Right. Where is the
Yes,
tool
where
for doing
is?
that? I seriously did lose it.
Bottom. If you hover over Zoom, bottom middle.
Yeah, it's completely locked. Oh, there it goes.
Okay.
I was manipulating the wrong window, which was not helping. All right, let's see if this works.
There you
All
go.
right. Are you seeing my terminal?
Yep. I got me some level up command line action.
Thanks to a colleague at Red Hat, David Cantrell, for the name of this machine, because I used to refer to it as my cloud at work.
Nice.
So he did me a favor and petitioned for a DNS entry for it, and of course he got to pick the name. So yeah, now I have a very long cloud word for the name of the server. All right, so by way of a little background, If you haven't used it before, I highly recommend Vert Builder and Vert Install, part of the libguestfs tools, which can easily create kind of new KVM machines. And I'll just kind of briefly see if I have it here. So my janky script for doing that, basically you can kind of in a couple of lines just create a new vert image, which I think is super handy. And so I did that with a RHEL 8 base machine, and that's what's in this guy over here. And this has, as you can see, has basically nothing. It has the base install for well, if I could type a password, that would also help. Probably should have done
Minor detail.
no password. As you can see, it has basically no repos installed, right? No Apple,
it's
no
base,
code ready. And so as a result, there's a lot of stuff that you might find useful not here. And let me just see if I can find my notes window. One thing I did want to mention, and maybe I'll try to modify the slide towards the end, is I did create a GitHub repo called the Level Up Hour or something brilliant like that, where I'm trying to keep the show notes. So if you want to see kind of what I was thinking or whatever, or what, handy links, that kind of stuff. And as we will kind of further getting on, we're doing points for this show. So, and some ways you can get points are by watching the episodes, but then also PRs or issues or whatever on the repo to give us ideas for future shows or things that you think we should add to the show notes, that kind of stuff. And we'll regularly give out the total status of the points, and hopefully that'll add some gaming to the Twitch stream, right? Because everybody on Twitch is a gamer. So
everyone on Twitch is a gamer. Funny.
Exactly.
So the show notes, I was trying to find it on GitHub. Is it under your repo, or did you create like
No, I created an actual one.
You created an org? Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I just need to make sure I know what I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's I think it's level up. It's level-up-hour.
Okay. Because there is something else level up, but not hour.
Yeah, that guy.
Level up. Yeah.
Yeah, level up seems to be a pretty common name. So just shocking.
Yeah.
So I started some show notes there, and that's basically there. So one of the first things that one of the common ones that I use kind of this technique for is nmap. Nmap is, at least in my experience, almost never installed on any Linux distro by default. However, is super handy when under like very unusual conditions, right? So you really need it when you need it, but you don't need it all that often. So the last thing you want to do is like change your golden deployment to include nmap. So instead, I use it via a container. So I'm going to cheat here because I kind of try to prep a little bit. But so what we do is we do Podman. So I use Podman pretty exclusively. Docker will basically, it's command interchangeable, so you can use Docker here. I like Podman better, particularly for the build side, because I think it's a lot faster. And for most RHEL admins, as well as any other kind of admin, they don't like daemons running in the background, and so having the Docker daemon running in the background all the time, people dislike that. So Podman doesn't have a daemon like that. The other thing that Podman can do that Docker generally, at least last I knew, you can't run anything as non-root. So if you notice, I'm running this as my normal user, no sudo, but I can still run containers. There's some limitations, right? You can't deploy to a port that's under 1,000. It's kind of the same root rules, but it means that I can just run stuff. I don't need to have super privilege. So I'm just going to run it, but then I'm going to immediately delete it when I'm done with the container. And I use this most of the time because otherwise you end up with, cruft all over your machine. So I use the RM. I is interactive. T is TTY. both of those just make things better. And then I'm going to run. So there's this. Okay, so here's where you get into a little bit of diciness as an admin, in my opinion.
Okay.
Using random containers from the internet is dangerous, right?
Yes.
So, you know, for this call or for this show, I'm going to use a couple of random internet containers. If it was my own data center, I would build these containers myself and then use them somewhere, from then on, either by going and looking at the person's GitHub and forking it and being able to take advantage of their work, sure.
Hmm.
But generally speaking, I don't recommend kind of running random internet containers. The risk is limited here, right? Because we are running, it's not running as a root, it's running, in this case, it's running in a trash virtual machine. But I am giving it enough privilege to do something like nmap. So, so if you're familiar with nmap, this is basically from the example docs. Is just you can scan, the nmap.org site,
Yep.
so that you can kind of test it out. And I also cheated because I previously downloaded, or theoretically previously downloaded, the nmap container, so it will take a lot less time. But what I think is super cool is that now all you have to do once you've done this once is wait for nmap, which is of course not a quick and dirty little application. It takes
No.
a little while to scan the whole machine, um, which I guess is a good thing. So we do have a question on the thing,
Yes.
about
So we're
talk
talking
about
about
that.
trusts and images. So when we talk about trusted images at Red Hat, what we mean is images that you have put together and have put in a trusted repository, right? So like
Right.
you have taken a base container, for example, Narendev, and have added things to it to make it your unique container or image, for your applications or your specific needs. So you would take something like UBI and then add in, like Nginx or whatever components you need to this container image, and that you would put in a trusted registry, and you would prefer that registry over all others for container image pulling.
Yeah,
And
and
yeah, and then you can still verify with GPG and SHA sums and everything else along with that, right? Like
right.
this
So,
image is the one that I want. It needs to be this SHA, and make sure
and
it's
actually, I think Podman is actually doing that for you behind the scenes. They are verifying
yes.
that it's coming from where it says it's coming from, at least.
Hmm.
Um, the thing is that the Docker repo, which is where I'm getting this, or Docker registry. Sorry, why
Yeah.
did we decide a new word when we just really mean a repository, just like a DNF or Yum repository?
Well, it's a
I know.
registry because you can sign up, get
Right,
stuff.
right.
Yeah.
So so
Anyways,
so that one's public, right? Which is both a good thing and a bad thing.
right.
The Docker registry has trusted elements.
Yes.
It's a relatively limited set. Trusted, you can probably trust Docker to do the elements in their registry that are theirs. Those I think are all indicated by the if you notice, this is like the way this is named is this is like a namespace here. Oops.
Mhm.
Um, which in the case of the Docker registry is also the username. And then here's the specific container we're talking about. I believe the Docker one, the trusted stuff, is all underscore, and that's the trusted registry. Um, if you trust another organization within the Docker registry, you might also be able to pull stuff from there and be okay trusting it. So Bitnami, for example, is an example of some people who have content like that. Um, the other thing you can do is you go to somebody you trust and use their registry. So, for example, and I was surprised that not a lot of people know about this, but if you look in the container registry list, I always do that backwards. You can actually see here are the ones that RHEL ships with. Okay, so as common with most comp files, right? If you, the default is commented out. So here are two registries by Red Hat, which I trust Red Hat, so therefore I trust their registries. These are not open registries, and so as a
Right.
result, they are trusted. or at least I trust them. And then if you actually go to registry.redhat.io, you can find a particular container there, and you'll see that it actually has a rating. So
Hmm.
we're actually running security scans on them. Um, so you have to trust. There's a bunch of layers of trust in this problem. It's very much like trusting an RPM, though, in that you
Yeah.
need to trust the organization that's delivering you this binary blob. In the case of an RPM, it's the RPM itself. In the case of container, it's the OCI image. So you got to trust that that what is in that binary blob is what the registry says it is.
Right.
Then on top of that, because containers are, it's kind of like downloading a VM. So if you ever use Vagrant, for example, you
Mhm.
download boxes, or Bitnami used to have a big business in downloading VMs. AMIs are a great example. So you have to trust the content inside the container itself.
Yeah.
So we have well-known ways of doing that because it's all Linux, so therefore they have trusted package repositories behind them. So you take Fedora or you take UBI, which is the RHEL
Mhm.
one, and you can trust that the RPMs that you're installing using their installation tools are the correct ones. So there's all these different layers of trust, and so that's kind of why I pointed out it's relatively easy to get to trusted stuff. It's just that you have to be careful of it to make sure you do it.
Right. And I would like to point out that the open source Quay.io, like the Quay.io that you can use for free, will do security scanning. It's with Clear, some light security scanning of your containers for you. Like even then, though, you still have to trust the source, right? Like I'm looking at one of my containers here, and yes, it passed all its security scans 17 days ago, but do you really trust Chris Short with this task, right? Like with this function kind of deal, if that makes sense, right? Like just because it passed the security scan, do you really trust it? Like that's what you have to decide.
Okay, so I wanted to show off nmap a little bit. Does anybody have a favorite nmap command that we should try and see if it really works?
Nmap dash capital A, that always works.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but we've run that one already. So I don't know what
Nah,
happens
I'm
if we.
trying to think. Oh man, my nmap. Oh, I've got an nmap note somewhere where I've got some cool nmap hacks. I wonder if I transported it to.
So this
Yes, I
one
did.
So this is
Oh,
actually an example of where you should think about a little bit about the fact that you're inside of a container and not, at the same
mm,
time. So
yeah,
where does localhost go, for example? Um,
right.
so localhost will be the container itself, which is probably not what you really meant to do.
Hmm.
Um, but what you can do is you can cheat. You can do the obvious cheat, which is give the IP address of the machine you're actually on. But another way you could do it, in theory, I don't know if this will actually work, but I think it should. But you can actually give the container, and this is a security hole, right? So
This is yeah. This is
I'm
very
passing,
much,
right. I'm basically making the container have the same network stack as the OS or the VM I'm running in.
which is kind of terrifying.
Kinda. But yeah, so now what's interesting is, as you probably know, right, nmap is actually a privileged operation.
Yes,
So I'm actually getting an error here because I'm trying to nmap directly from inside the machine without using sudo.
right.
So not to make everything super complicated, but the point is, for most use cases, except for trying to hit yourself, nmap. Actually, I wonder if it'll work without. Actually,
You
I
can
don't know.
scan anything that's chrisshort.net.
Well, I was going to try and do localhost,
Oh, the
but
actual
by
IP address?
IP. Yeah.
Maybe that might work.
Let's see. How's my typing? Ah, looks like it worked. At least it's thinking about it.
Yeah. Like I love me some nmap. Nmap was one of those programs I discovered in the late 90s, and I've contributed to it on and off, and it has been a lifesaver for me in almost
Right.
every situation I could imagine.
All right. So let's move on to the next thing. And we can see another one that I use a fair amount, especially if I want to know if something I'm reading on the internet is a trusted source, is Whois. So
Yes.
um, what I did was I found kind of another random container on the internet that does a Whois, and so I can run a Whois against redhat.com, and look at that. Now I have Whois. My other problem with Whois is, at least on Fedora, it's been replaced by this weird Java thing that's called JWhois, and I don't know what that is, and I find it very confusing. So yeah, so I like regular old Whois. So this is, as you expect, the Whois of redhat.com. Although I don't think I've ever seen this cum laude.com thing before. I hate the
Is that the
tmux
origin? Yeah, that's the high level.
Oh, this is the Whois
Yeah,
server. Oh,
that's
okay, never mind.
yeah.
That's just who we're querying. So again, random container on the internet. Quality may vary, but it does show you, it does work, right? In the vast majority of cases, it'll be okay. You can often, you can at least get some level of trust if you actually go to whatever registry is in, mostly has some sort of landing page for the particular container. You trace that back to their GitHub repo. You can actually check with at least the Docker registry. I know you can do this. You can check if it's actually getting built from that GitHub repo, so you can be pretty confident that it's there and it works. So yeah.
Right.
Okay, so that's Whois. Also, not terribly exciting, but another one that, at least for me, handy when you need it.
Yes.
Don't need it very often. Almost never install by default. So that's why it's another one that's kind of useful.
You know what would be a useful one for me back in my network admin days? Telnet.
Oh yeah, Telnet.
Because you can test mail servers with it. You can
Right.
test all kinds of gear with just like straight up Telnet, right? But I would never, ever, 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 ever want Telnet anything installed on my system.
Right, exactly. So, excuse me.
Podman search Telnet today. I learned. Holy
Yeah.
smokes!
So you can, Podman search Telnet.
Oh, is Jess? No, that's not Jess
What?
Fraz. That was docker.io/Jess. I was wondering if she had a Jessie Frizzell, if she had a
Yeah.
Telnet container, like I would immediately trust that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's her or not.
Let's go check.
Yeah.
I don't think it is. I think she goes by like Jess Fraz.
Jess Fraz. Yeah, probably. Let's see. How would I don't know if there's, I don't think there's like an info though.
There is.
There is? Is it just info?
Well, maybe no.
No, that's on the container
Docker
itself,
or
right?
like Podman. Is there describe or eval or something like that?
I don't know.
Just hit the help page.
Yeah, well, we can also try all the commands to see what happens.
Yeah, that's true. We could. Where is?
The problem is there's a lot of options.
Oh, yeah. There we go. Create diff. Generate health history. Show the history of an image. That might be useful.
Yeah, what I can try and do.
Info. Oh, this place.
No, that's the
Podman
system.
related system.
Yeah.
Info. Damn it. Okay.
It's a clone from Docker.
Mm-hmm.
Inspect. But that's
I wonder if you have to be local though.
Yeah, I think that's, well, this is also where Scopio comes in, which I don't know very well.
I don't either. Yeah, that's a good point.
But it's
you don't have it installed.
Yeah, but it's
in the repo.
Like half of it is actually in Podman directly. Like Podman is like a runtime. It's just a wrapper around Builda, Scopio, and like Cryo, I want to say. And so Podman, I don't know that it actually does anything on its own. So I think I have Scopio. I just can't use it directly. Like I have the library or something.
Right. Yeah. So Waleed is on. Waleed is always on. He said inspect and check the labels.
Aha.
He also uses Scopio inspect doc. Okay, here's the whole command in chat right here. Scopio inspect docker / docker.io image tag. Like that's awesome. Let me log into my Fedora box back here and try that.
Now I have Scopio.
Ta-da! Yeah, it's in the base repos. This is cool. We are having fun.
Let's see, Docker.
I gotta remember the name of that box. Elmer? No. Yes. Okay.
And then it was called just, do I need the tag or do I just need the?
I would just do latest, just tag latest.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, let's just try without it. See if it defaults correctly. There
Mhm.
we go. It is Jesse Frizzell. Look at that.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. So yeah, if you don't follow her on Twitter or her blog or whatever, you should.
Mhm.
But
Very, very
yeah,
smart. Very, very, very. I've learned a lot about containers just by reading through her Dockerfile repos. Let's just put
yes,
it like that.
I've been following her, trying to mimic her. I want to do all of my development inside containers mechanism, and it's actually in some ways very similar to the Flatpak model. It's kind of interesting. It's worth checking out. I don't know if I can share, because the real way I would do it is with a. Let me see if I can share like this whole window or this whole desktop.
Oh, the whole
This
window.
guy.
Yeah.
There we go. Except you
Yeah,
guys
look at
probably
that.
see
Thank you.
multiple of us.
Thank you so much, Waleed. Like that was super helpful.
Yeah, totally. So what I will often do though is actually, and I can never, they keep moving stuff around, I think, to get me to be like a part of their club. There we go.
I'll get a Twitter handle for Jess right now, so don't worry.
So you'll often want to go to their kind of page on wherever it is. This one's not great, but usually the overview will tell you a little bit about how to use it and stuff too. So let's see what happens if. Sorry, I'm going. Oh, sorry about that. So let's do Podman run. I don't know. Let's make sure we kill it afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
See what happens. So I use Telnet actually a lot to make sure web servers are serving the right content.
Yes, you can literally interrogate any port with Telnet. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Printers, scanners, yeah, you name it. Like you can kind of. This is again why Telnet's not installed everywhere. You can kind of get unwieldy with it.
So sometimes, so one of the weird things about containers is you can't override an entry point on the command line without using a flag.
Right.
So,
but I would imagine
this seems a little borked.
The entry point is probably.
Let's just try it.
I gotta go look up this.
Oh, there we go.
Image.
Well, I don't know. I say
Telnet not found. That's cool.
Yeah, it seems a little at odds with the container.
Wait a minute. That's not right.
So I say we abandon the Telnet, and I was going to talk a little bit about a couple of others. So what happens when you either don't trust whatever, or alternately can't find a container for the thing you want? So I made a couple because I wanted to solve this problem. So Chris, this is funny because I think we were just talking about SS,
yes,
which I don't know how to use.
Right.
But I know how to use netstat. So I want to use. Oh, by the way, another thing, in honor of Dan Walsh, of SE Linux and now container fame, gives me a hard time for using Docker files or files called Docker file in Podman and stuff. I've been slowly trying to shift it over to OCI file, because you're actually making is a OCI, which is a what's that?
That's true.
Image open.
But would that get picked up the same way by the registries?
Well, so it doesn't matter because it's just the file. I'm not actually building it.
Well, that's true.
What I do is I put the image in place, right? So
yeah, okay. Anyways.
Yeah, so it's just kind of funny. If you really want to, you can always do a symlink across to it. I actually, one of the common ones I use, because I often want to make multi-base containers. So like I'll want to have a Fedora version of it, but I might want to have a UBI version of it. And so what I'll actually do is have like OCI file dot Fedora OCI file dot UBI, whatever, and then symlink to the correct one. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this is really all you have to do. So the first thing I do is I pick, and because one of the best practices around using your from line is you should always declare a tag if you're doing a container for something like production. We are
Mm.
not. We are doing containers that we are going to use all the time,
And
and
boy,
we actually in a sense want upgrades, right? We want the changes that might land because we want security fixes and all that stuff, and we know that our net stat is not going to break something in production if the Fedora version upgrades and it gives us a new version of net stat, for example. This could easily be UBI or anything else that you like, but then the next line here is just how do we install netstat. For me, this is a common problem I have, particularly for tools like netstat, which are often installed by default, but not
mm,
always. So like
mm,
netstat, for example, is installed by default in Fedora, but not in RHEL. So I need to go find what package it's actually being installed from. So if you don't know how to do that, you can do like yum provides or DNF provides, and then give the name of whatever the executable is, and that's how you can figure out where to get it from.
right.
But then also speaking of best practices, I make this one line by using the ands, but I break it with a slash just to make it more readable. But the reason I do this as one line is because, as I often explain with containers, when you're building a container, pretend like there's a reboot in between every line of the container file.
Yes, that is the best way to describe it. There is a
Right.
reboot because you're building new layers,
Exactly.
and each layer has its own like stack of stuff. So no matter what, if you run a new command in that Docker file or OCI file in this case, it will act like there's a reboot in progress.
So there's also a question in the chat about what
Mm-hmm.
version.
Oh,
So
I
the
have
question
so
is,
many opinions on this.
okay, so the question is always use the latest stable version of the base image or which? And so the answer is it depends. So in
Okay.
this case, what I'm implying with this line here is latest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that is literally what I'm actually writing, even though I don't have to.
Right.
And so because of this use case where what I really want every time I build this container image is to get the latest version of Fedora with the latest version in netstat.
Oh.
However, if I'm doing an application like that is actually going to run inside the container, I almost never want to do this. What
Mm-hmm.
I always want to do is something like this, because then I'll know that I'm getting a guaranteed version of whatever Linux. And depending on the Linux, I would say 95, 99% of the time, if you declare their major version, you will only get backwards compatible fixes.
Right.
That's not bug for bug compatible, which if you ever go and see any of my rants about modularity and AppStream, that is actually something I would like to be able to do. I would like to be able to be guaranteed that things are bug for bug compatible, or know when they're bug for bug compatible, because I may be taking advantage of that bug. One of my great stories about this is when Windows 95, I think, came out. They had to, at the last minute, like a 0 day, put a bug back into Windows that they had squashed because Civilization, the super popular video game, wouldn't work on Windows 95 because it relied
Whoa.
on that bug. And that was going to kill their sales. So I don't know how apocryphal this story is, but this is the way I heard the story.
I need to look this up because this sounds crazy.
Right, but it's common, right? Because especially when you're talking about video games,
Right.
you take advantage of failures in the operating system to eke out that little bit more speed.
You got to get that performance. Yeah.
Yeah, and so one of the problems I had personally was I used to work for a company that deployed Drupal for a lot of customers.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sorry.
exactly, and I actually quite like Drupal. There are some problems with it, but
Well, mass deployments of Drupal is hard, right?
oh
Like
yeah,
I've done that, and it is not
right,
simplistic at
right,
all.
right.
Yeah.
Well,
No.
so one of the problems that Drupal had around Drupal 6 or 7 maybe was that they were relying on PHP, I want to say 5.2,
That's
and
right. They were.
all of the distros went up to 5.3. So if you got the
Mhm.
latest version, and if you've done anything with PHP, not the best on backwards compatibility. PHP 5.3 was not backwards compatible to 5.2, at least as far as Drupal was concerned.
Right. Yeah.
So I had to pin 5.2 all over the place.
Right.
And pinning is actually an Ubuntu term, I believe, or Debian term. Because we call it what do we call that in RHEL land? We call it version locking, I think. Pinning seems so much better as a name. But basically, you had to pin the old version so that things would still run. So to answer the question in short, I try to be as declarative as possible when I'm building the container image or when I'm describing the container image in the OCI file or the Docker file. And then I change it just so that it's a known quantity when I want to upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
Or God forbid, actually use CI. That's another option too.
Right.
So there's that guy. But long story short, so I do the install and then I never got to why do I have the clean all here? Because it's a reboot, I'm creating an image. If I do the clean all, it will kill all the DNF repositories so that that image will be smaller.
Yeah, the cache will get cleared out. All the metadata cleared out. Yeah,
exactly.
It is a common practice.
Right, exactly. And the reason, and so just kind of to point out why that ampersand thing there is. One thing is if you're building containers, like if you don't know what you're doing yet and you're working on a new container, I do not do this. I actually will have single DNF install lines while I try to figure out what I'm trying to do, and preserve the cache so that build time is faster. And then I go back and clean up the OCI file at the end once I know I have all my dependencies correct and all that jazz. But if you do DNF install, net tools and then psutils and then whatever as separate lines, you can take advantage of the caching for the rebuild times. Does that make sense?
Yes.
When you don't know what you're doing, because that's common when you're trying to figure out a new app. Because a big challenge a lot of the time is Fedora, or even worse, there's another one called Fedora Minimal. They have a whole mess of stuff that you don't expect, or is missing that you don't expect. The one I run into all the time is both PS and which, neither of which are usually there.
Right.
So yeah, so that's a common one.
PS is a common command. Which is a common command. Like I couldn't live without.
Well, I have actually. There's something now I can't remember what it is, but there's a container I built that wouldn't run because deep in the bowels of their code, they were using which, but it wasn't a declared dependency.
Oh.
Because everybody has which.
Right.
Why wouldn't it be there?
Why wouldn't which be there?
Right. Yeah. So it can be.
If
it can
you don't
be a pain
need
in the butt.
which.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So getting out of here.
So that's interesting. In the case where you're building that software in a container, you would have to say DNF install which,
correct.
And then install the software itself in that container. That's cool.
Right.
And you can still build it as a container, and you can add the dependencies in one by one, as opposed to having this mass, like whole collection of things added to the container. The idea is to keep your containers light and minimal and defensible, if that makes sense.
Exactly. So and by way of education, right? I'm pretty sure the which package is called which because I install it a fair amount.
Yes, it is.
But unlike netstat, for example, which I was like, wait, it's not called netstat. So now we just build this guy, and so we just do podman build, and we give it a pretty name like netstat, and then I actually don't know if it'll work with dot. So if you're doing Docker build with a Docker file, you can put just dot and it will discover what it needs. But that does not work. So you do need that, but it's no big deal. All right, so I previously built this, so it's obviously much faster. Oh, one thing I forgot to point out, let me just go back to this. If you're, okay, so the kind of container we're building here is what I see generally on the internet referred to as an application container or a CLI container. And the reason is because it has an entry point that isn't something like bin bash or something that is going to start up a sleep kind of mechanism, or like a HTTPD, which is going to run in the background or something like that. the way this container works is it's actually going to put this as the entry point into the container, so you can pass it things directly with flags. So user bin netstat. The thing to remember about this, though, is that this doesn't work with CMD. Because of the difference, and like the difference between entry point and CMD is so subtle.
It is very subtle, yes.
That I have a really hard time explaining it. But an entry point will actually pass the flags directly to it. A command is just executed cold, as best I can explain it. So this will not work if right here you had typed CMD. So getting out of here. All right, so we built it, and now we can run it. But here's where it gets wonky, because if we just run it, netstat has just a default output, so I don't actually have to pass in any flags. But if I do this, again, we run this problem of, wait, that's the inside of the container's netstat. That isn't very useful to me. So for this guy, we have to run nethost. Excuse me. And now we see what we expect, right? Is that see if you see RHEL 8 base, that's the name of this machine. Oh my God, I hate the jumping. Because see, the problem is if you select with the command select, it just holds it there. But if you use the tmux select, it jumps. So RHEL 8 base. So these are what we expect to come out of netstat if it's run as if it was on this machine. But then we can also pass flags to it. So we can say ln, which is what I usually do because I can never remember the labels and stuff, and I just want port numbers. We can pass other command. Oh, that didn't come out pretty. But we can pipe it to the things and stuff like that. I have no idea what netstat does with less anyway. But as you can see, it's actually somewhat less useful for proving that it's local, versus inside the container. But you can see that, here it does what you expect, right? Any questions in the chat?
No, we're talking about syscalls and learning Linux and that kind of thing. But Craig, our good friend Craig, that did the home lab install of OKD44. Anyone here a Fedora Packager Group sponsor level member? I'm in need of a sponsor to get some Fedora-based SCL org images into the Fedora registry for the OKD project. I feel like I might be able to help you with that, Craig.
Yeah, I certainly know people who can help you with that.
Yes, send me a work email, Craig, and I can probably nudge a few folks.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I'll get Langdon in on it too. Question for Podman: do we need to use the file as OCI file, or can it be whatever it can as we do with Dockerfile?
Let's try it. So I just changed it to called cow because that's my default variable name, and works fine. Yeah, chickens and cows have always been my default variable names. Most people use like foo and bar or fizz and buzz.
I mean,
cow and chickens.
If you specify the file name, you can call it whatever you want.
Yep, right? Exactly.
If there's an expectation, like some automation frameworks expect a Docker file, right? Some registries expect a Docker file before it'll kick off a scan or something like that.
And we can even make it a Docker file. I just was
like we can call it whatever we want.
Dan Walsh, so. And it's smart enough also, if you notice, it's going super fast, right? It's smart enough to know that just because I changed the file name, it didn't need to rebuild. Even if I can touch the file and it still won't rebuild much. Maybe. There we go. I can also, I can drop. And so as soon as I add something new, let's say volume opt, and it'll recognize that there's a new line in there, and I happen to choose a super fast line just for the sake of argument. But if you notice, it built a new layer to do that one. So hopefully that answers the question. All right, so I have one more example I was going to give, which is one of my favorite tools called How Do I, for everyone who needs help with remembering how to do things, particularly on Linux. But it actually, basically, this is a command line search of Stack Overflow, which I find kind of awesome.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the reason I chose this guy is because it's not packaged. So it's not packaged for. Whatchamacallit, it's not packaged for Fedora. I don't know if it's packaged anywhere, but it is in pip, right, or PyPI, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the way we get it, let me do this, and it also has a bug. So we'll talk about that in a second.
Oh,
But
fun.
same dealio with the DNF install, right? So just to get Python and pip, but then I actually do the pip install. Now remember, this is running as root, right? So, but it's inside a container, so I don't care if it does a global install. Actually, I would prefer a global install because it's easier to address. My first guess as to where it would have put How Do I with the pip install was user bin How Do I.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see. Oop. Also helps to be able to spell.
Spelling helps. Yes.
So now I go ahead and build that guy, and then theoretically
But you
I
said there
can
was a bug.
right, exactly. So let's see what the bug is.
I'm here for bugs.
I'm here yeah, I love bug. Oh wait. So what did I call it? How do I and so you would think I would get some data back. Okay, so now, well, that's no good, right? So
Okay.
I'm an
That
idiot.
sucks.
It's not actually in user bin.
Is it user local
So
bin?
how do I fix it?
Hmm.
Um is
Yeah,
I
you gotta go
declare an entry
find it.
point. Exactly.
Yeah.
Except, oh, now you got me thinking
No,
user local.
sorry. Yeah,
Uh,
my bad. Ben Bash.
yeah, there we go. So the fun part though is, find.
Not there. Which not
Yeah.
there. Yeah, fun. All
So
right. So where might binaries be in a Linux or Unix file system?
right. So you can use logic by using the LFS. Oh, not there. And guess that it might be here, which it is.
Oh, lucky
But
guess,
then
Chris.
what I can do is I could also just say,
Nah,
oh,
it's true. You could just do that. Yes.
right. Um, And so when it's a weirder one, like something that is getting installed, using like an actual like shell build,
Mhm.
kind of, you know, it can be in some random places. People will stick stuff, half of it in opt,
Yeah, I
whatever.
mean,
So,
yeah. It's
so I know it's addressable. The thing is that there's no pathing when I'm coming in from the outside as the container.
mhm.
So I have to give it an explicit whatever you call it. I have to give the explicit path to the binary. Um, well, this is taking longer than it should. There it goes.
Well, dependencies resolved. There we go. All right.
And then I can do awesome which and get the same thing you guessed. But now if we see uh, let's see. So if you see here, like, so I have a bunch of Fedoras created because I was fooling
Mhm.
around with stuff.
Yeah.
But if you notice, I don't have the how do I container. It's gone, right? I do have the image,
Yes.
but not the instance
It's
of
plural. Yeah,
images
there you go.
of the container itself. Um, so yeah. So, but now I can fix this guy, and but the important part is which is not installed, right? It did not create another layer or any of that stuff
Mhm.
in my image. It was just in that one instance. One of the things I try to explain the thing is that if you ever took a object-oriented design class, the container image is the object, right? And the container, that you see under PS, right, is the
Mhm.
instance.
Yes.
So, oh boy, that's not going to help. All right, so now we just got to build it again.
All right.
And now we can do run. But let's just pass. Oops. I
What did you do?
don't know. Oh, I forgot the entry point.
That'll do it.
So I got a version out of it, great, but then I can do something like, how do I build a container? Let's see what it says. There we go. Or
Wow. That's
bash
not really a great
for
answer, but okay.
I know.
But
So
that's a good
it's
answer.
right. So it's a little hit or miss. It does have this nice flag that if you say -a, it'll
Yeah.
actually give you the full like Stack Overflow page, which
Okay.
gives you a lot more context,
Yeah.
which you can sometimes figure it out from. Otherwise, you just go and use your browser. But it's handy for a lot of things. Like the
Yeah,
for
no,
loop,
I
I
could
think is great.
totally like I'm probably gonna install it right now to be honest with you.
Yeah, right. So like the for loop, it's like I just need to remember where the semicolon. Do I need a semicolon before the do or after the do? I can never remember, right? Like that
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, uh, so there's how do I always like to pitch it just because I think it's a great little piece of software. And I don't know. We're almost out of time. Do we have any more questions?
Hang on. Someone is not realizing I'm on air right now. Hang on. No. There's not really many more questions. There's some general comments, right? Like Narendav's very happy with Rubo Inc. for getting some free courses for spinning up some Linux knowledge for him.
Cool.
Narendev says like PHP is kind of a foreign thing to him, and he needs to learn the Linux file systems and Linux systems in general a little bit better. So yeah, like that works.
Yeah, you should definitely, if you haven't before, taken a skim of the actual LFS, right? The Linux, like it's a standard.
Yeah.
It
Yeah. Like
it
Linux file
makes
system is a
sense,
standard. Yeah. It there's a logic and reason and rhyme to
right?
it. Yeah.
And so if you kind of go skim it once or read it once, then you're like, oh, that's why that's there. And then the next
Mhm.
time at 2 a.m. when you're trying to find a file, you have a little bit more chance of finding it.
That's why I knew there was something in user local bin as opposed
Right,
to
right,
user bin or whatever.
right. Non-native
Bin.
install, so use the local.
Mhm.
So yeah, so it like if I had thought about it more, I probably would have guessed it myself. I just also want to show off how you get which. So I also had a little demo of MTR. We're almost out of time, but basically I was using MTR kind of the same way. Maybe we'll talk about it next time. But the point being is just that getting all these little commands is super handy,
Mhm.
and you often don't want to install because like if you do. Actually, let's do this real quick.
I've got a little extra time blocked off for you. Don't worry.
Okay, cool. So if we do Podman RMI, where is it? How do I? All right, so let's do a real build of how do I, for example.
Okay.
And you're just going to see how much garbage you have to. It's
Cached. Everything's cached.
clashing.
You
Yeah.
gotta clear out all your
Right. Let me kill
fun
this guy.
stuff. Yeah.
I thought it would collectively destroy. 307. Yeah. Let's see. Anybody know what the command? There's
the clear cache.
Yeah. Let me. Let's see.
Give me just a second.
Here we go. This was like
Clean out the cache.
Podman RMI $.
That's what it is. Yeah. You got to list all the images, and then
Right.
there you go. Yeah. I knew it was more to it than just that.
Oops, what did I do wrong? Oh,
no. You don't need that. Yeah.
That's from my aliases file. That's why I was finding it there. Okay, so let's just see if 7. Okay, cool. So it's gone. So now if I do a build, so lots of stuff was using Fedora, so that's why it didn't clear that one. But nothing else was using Python and pip, so that's why it's building that again. Or at least that exact command, right? So if I had Python, pip, and which, it would still build a new container layer. This is going to take a minute, but
that's fine.
Yeah, well, so what I want to point out though is like the amount of garbage I install on my data center machine, right? For something as relatively trivial as how do I which,
Yeah.
at least for me, scares the crap out of me. So I don't touch that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I try not to. It was back in the day, right? Like back in the day, back in the 90s when I was building and rebuilding and building and rebuilding Linux systems all the time, is because I couldn't clean the cruft off of them, right? So I wanted a clean system all the time. So I'd end up installing a bunch of stuff and being like, crap, I can't get rid of this, I can't get rid of that, because all these dependencies were harder to break back
Right.
then. And, so like, instead of having to rebuild a machine, now you just use containers
Exactly.
and you can have your commands wherever you want them.
And in fact, what we're going to talk about in one of the future episodes is actually how to distribute these containers. So let's say you do go to the effort of building your your witch container, right, and your netstack container and all those things. We're going to talk in a later episode about how you distribute those inside your data center, um, in a way that you can kind of access them from anywhere. So um, and if you have an OpenShift instance already, it makes it so much easier because you don't need to actually install anything. You just have to set
Right.
some flags, which is
Yeah.
kind of nice.
Yeah.
So somebody commented on using links for browser stuff, and in the CLI. I will often do that, but I usually use elinks just because I think it's faster and better these days. But one thing, and this is a knock a little bit on the OpenShift folks, we gotta talk to them one of these days. Elinks doesn't support JavaScript, at least on Fedora. It's compiled out, and the OpenShift console will not open without JavaScript.
Okay.
So if I want to install OpenShift on a particular, like a VM or something, and then I want to go and make sure it's working and making sure that it, like, I have a networking problem, like a routing problem, rather than a running problem, I'll use elinks to go and load it, whatever it is, to make sure I can actually see it from localhost, right, even though it's headless, and then come to the other machine and realize whether it's a networking issue or did it not come up at all.
Right.
So I've used this technique for years and years and years, inside VMs, inside containers, to see if the thing that I'm trying to actually run is actually working.
Cool.
Yeah, so I got
So
to
there
figure
is a
out how to get
question.
elinks with
There's a
JavaScript.
couple questions now. What would you say is your preferred container to base new CLI type containers on?
So I'm on the fence. I actually should have done a couple of these on UBI. It would have been more trusted. If I need, excuse me, if I need enterprise software, I will usually use UBI. So like if I want something that's more enterprise grade, sorry, let me cough for a second.
Yeah,
I don't know
if you
why I have
need
such a
something a
cough.
little bit more like trusted, enterprise, hardened, tested, secure, UBI, universal base images from Red Hat will give you RHEL like images. It's basically RHEL under the hood, essentially.
Right.
No licensing needed, kind of thing, right? Like you just need to have access to the registry, grab the UBI images themselves, and you can build from those. Like that's kind of my default starting point. Langdon, yours might be different.
So I was kind of saying, like, I'm a little bit on the fence, right? So, and the reason is because I'm using them for different purposes. So uh, when I want something like Netstat, for example, that I'm using like in a data center as a tool for me because I want, whatever, I usually want the latest feature set. So as a result, I'll base that on Fedora. If, however, I'm building something that is real, right, something that might actually get deployed somewhere, I'll use UBI because I want the enterprise environment from the get go. So one of the things, right? So I want whatever Apache is deployed in RHEL 8 today, not what will be deployed in RHEL 9, 2 years from now. Or I'm just making up dates, just for the SECs listening. So that's kind of my choice a lot of the time. I also use Fedora a lot, so I'm familiar with where stuff is. So that also makes a difference. But as you can see, we can just do UB. It's UBI 8, right? Not UBI -8.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah, I think
all,
so. Right.
yeah.
But we can just build, and this should just work. And I don't know if you noticed, but I actually used DNF, not Yum.
Right.
But it should still work. However, I have to go get the image because this is my little demo VM, so I didn't have it installed. But yeah, so DNF and Yum are actually pretty much interchangeable on RHEL 8. So they both work. The thing is, if you use the letters YUM to do a command, it is nearly guaranteed to be an exact match to the same command in RHEL 7. If you use DNF, the letters DNF, you may get variances from that based on what DNF is trying to do. So DNF has got some more efficiencies, but its backwards compatibility layer is basically mapped through Yum.
Yes.
So now, if we let's do podman run.
I apologize if you hear a barking dog in the background.
I do hear a barking dog in the background.
This mic is so great until the dog barks. It's like the kryptonite for this mic. Dog barking.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So okay, so here's the thing.
So there it is with UBI. I just built it, right? It's exactly the same. No material changes. I just changed the base. And now maybe it's using a different version. Actually, let's see.
Right.
Anybody know what the command is for netstat version? Not that. Try all the obvious ones. There we go. So 2.10. What? Where'd my other?
You can do it, I believe.
Where'd it go? Oh, it must have
deleted them all.
I forgot.
Them all, remember?
Yeah, sad.
Go download something.
Exactly.
Yeah, I gotta pull another image.
Oh, that's what the --rm, right? Cleans it all up sometimes more than I meant it to.
Yeah, no kidding. So JP Dade is asking a question. Where would you go to find like packages for RHEL 8 versus RHEL 7? Right, like
for
some
UBI
things have
or?
no for just packages like DNF packages kind of thing, right? Like he has a problem finding the V8 engine type stuff, right? Like, so I know that from going from 7 to 8, we changed how repos were organized a little bit. So if you want,
so I wrote an article about this actually.
Yes, that's kind of why I was thinking this up.
So yeah, so on developers.redhat.com, if you search my name, it's pretty unique. So if you just search for Langdon, it usually works. There, I wrote an article explaining the different repos in RHEL 8, and the short version of that article is, actually, let me see.
I can find it. I'm looking for it.
Yeah, no, I was just going to list the repos so I can explain them.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if this will be too big. Okay, so Ansible is obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's not start with code ready. Let's start with base OS and AppStream. RHEL 8 base OS, this guy, or really whatever the right one is, but you know what I mean. The base OS one is where all the stuff that makes the operating system run lives. Okay, so it's like the bare minimum, as trim as we could make it, to give you, basically the RPMs that are there. It has a very long life cycle, generally speaking, very little variance, et cetera, et cetera. And so the idea of that is that this is the core of the operating system, because Linux, right? So, and this again, if you see my rants about modularity and AppStream, Linux distributions, the problem is both the fact that it's a distribution, but it's also an advantage. So a distribution goes lockstep as it goes version to version. So it means that all of the OS stuff plus all the applications all version together. This can be a huge advantage in that everything works together, except, of course, when it doesn't. But the downside is, and my typical example for this was in Fedora land, for example, there was a Ruby version change that Puppet didn't support. So Puppet was out of the OS, bang, done. So that's a pain, right? So with RHEL, and now with Fedora as well, what we do is we try to disconnect those two things so they can have independent life cycles. So the base OS is as small as we can get for the core of the OS, and that takes that long life cycle. AppStream is where all the applications live.
Yeah, so folks are asking for the article link. Is it introducing application streams in RHEL 8? Is that the article?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right, I'll share that.
Throw me the link or put the link there, and I'll check and make sure. But
yeah.
So AppStream is where the applications live. The thing that's cool about AppStream is because it's based on modularity, or what RHEL calls app streams, is you can have multiple versions of the same thing available. So you can have multiple versions of Ruby, multiple versions of Apache, et cetera, et cetera. Then there used to be so those are roughly equivalent to RHEL 7's, RHEL 7 RPMs, RHEL 7 optional, RHEL 7, what was it called? It's something fast.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It's where Docker lived. But yeah, totally blanking on what it's called. Extras. That's what it was.
That's right. Yeah.
So base OS, between base OS and AppStream, they're the equivalent of all of those repos. Then we also have develop repos. So basically stuff that you need to build other stuff, but you wouldn't actually run in production, right? So header files, all that kind of stuff. That's what's in Code Ready Builder. And so that's what's in that repo. And then there's one more repo, which is probably relevant, which is supplementary, which is an analog to the RHEL 7 supplementary. And supplementary is basically license encumbered stuff. So that's where Oracle's Java used to be, still is, I don't know. That's where basically anything that's license encumbered, where RHEL ships it because we have a relationship with, whatever organization that actually owns that license. But like something like Fedora can't ship, right? Because they don't have the license. So that's basically, in short, the differences between the various repos. The idea being to trim down the number, make the whole thing simpler, but also allow for a lot more flexibility. There is also now a RHEL 8 EPEL, both for modules or app streams and for kind of the base OS stuff.
Cool.
So let me just make sure that's the right article real quick. Probably is.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't think you wrote that. There was one before it that might have been it, but I don't think that was it. I also mentioned softwarecollections.org.
Oh yeah,
just because.
So software collections were an attempt to allow for multiple available versions of software prior to modularity. The thing that software collections lets you do that modularity and app streams don't let you do is you can have multiple versions installed at once. The problem is that when you run an application, you have to declare what version you want it to be, right? So because obviously there's no way for the operating system, well, that's not true, but in the tool chain that we have, there was no way for the operating system to know which version of the runtime you wanted to use for any given application, right?
Right.
So, the Drupal example, so you could have PHP 5.2 and 5.3 both installed at once, in theory. I don't know if they're actually there, but in theory. And 5.2 could be used for Drupal, and 5.3 could be used for WordPress on the same machine. What app streams let you do is also declare what version you want, but it doesn't support the multiple versions installed, but it also doesn't require you to declare what version you want to use. And what we found from most users is that's actually what they want. They don't actually want to be able to run both Drupal and WordPress on the same machine.
No.
Right?
No.
They want to be able to use the same OS and run Drupal and WordPress in two different virtual machines or two different containers. So that's basically the idea. I don't know. That was a long walk.
It's okay.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's fine. So
I'm very passionate on this subject, so
yeah,
bear with me.
Yeah, no kidding. So the Level Up Hour. Where can people find out more, man? Where should they go?
Oh yeah, we have a slide for that, but
we do.
Also,
I've fixed it, corrected it, or whatever. Yeah.
You did. It was wrong.
Yes. It said HTTP and not HTTPS.
Oh, I almost always do that because I rely on the server to redirect you.
Yeah, well,
But
yeah,
maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should have less faith in humanity. I
you
think is
should
what
have
I'm
less
telling
faith in humanity.
you. Yeah, I think this is the difference between admins and developers, is what you just described.
Yes, yes, yes.
Um,
So yeah, if
so
you want to go ahead and show that slide, man, that'd be great. And
oh right, I forgot I was doing that
nah,
sort of
you're
thing.
still
Here we go.
presenting. Yeah.
There we go. It's also in the chat, corrected just for you.
Yes, thank you very much. I dropped it in there.
Where did the slide go? I lost it altogether.
You lost your slide? No, that's sad.
Well, the like presentation version,
Oh yeah.
Now I'm waiting for it to load.
Come
there we go.
on.
Thinking.
We
We will have a super nice outro on this at some point, and Chris will be able to play a pretty magical set of logos and graphics and dancing pigs. I don't know.
Magical? I don't know about that.
Oh, that's what I
mean,
heard.
maybe. I mean, unicorns and rainbows potentially.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So let me. We did want to drop the cool level up our points code too. I forgot.
Oh yeah.
Let me see if I can find it. That would be helpful.
Oh yeah. I think
I lost some of my notes coming into the talk, unfortunately. But yeah, so we're not sure what you're going to get for this besides internet karma, but I mean it's internet karma.
At the very least, it's internet karma.
Right. So if you go there and fill out the form, you will get points, and maybe someday we will have something besides just internet karma. But yeah, so that's for this episode. There is also a coming to any level up hour.
Wait, are you displaying something? Are you supposed to be displaying?
I put them in the chat. So.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. And then so go there, get some points. Maybe, and then we'll start doing it on this show, like starting next week, is we'll talk about who's got the most points.
You need permission to view this form.
Oh, did I forget to switch it?
Yes.
That'll teach.
This form can only be viewed by users in the owner's organization, so you can't do it on a redhat.com domain either, by the way.
Cool.
Yeah.
That seems like a fail.
Yeah, might be.
Where's the stupid edit? Sorry. Next time.
Oh, you're fine.
Next time it will be better because it will be in better shape.
Yes. This was our first show. This is our first outing with this. Yes.
Our soft launch.
Soft launch. Yeah.
Exactly.
Something like that. People need those internet points. That's what your
buzz
says. Yeah.
I know. I mean, like Reddit has built an entire company on it. So
yes. On up nuggets and such. Yes.
Here we go.
All
right. Try a reload. See if it works now.
Let's see. Yes, it works for me. Does it work for the folks out in the world? We'll have to wait a few seconds on chat on that. Let's see. Or I could actually just use an incognito window.
Oh, good call. I could have done that too. Oh, somebody reports that it works.
Cool. All right. Yep, it works. Cool.
And if you check out the GitHub repo, there may also be points for submitting issues or PRs. If you thought anything good that you wanted to add, there will be more internet points, but those will be manually added because of our high quality technology system for collecting points.
Yes. It asks for code.
Oh, if you follow that link, the code is embedded.
Is it the
TLUH? Yeah, so it's the TLUH. It's like 819287 and 583668.
Yes, I can drop those in here.
If you follow the link, it'll it's just buried in there and auto fills.
So there's your 2 codes, folks. How about that?
Yay points.
Yay points. All right. Thank you very much, Langdon. This was very educational. I appreciate everybody joining us today on the Level Up Hour. Please go to red.ht/level up hour to learn more, and look forward to us every week, every Wednesday, this time slot.
Yes.
Langdon and Chris, and maybe other guests as well. Yes.
Oh, definitely other guests. Definitely other
Yes.
guests.
Cool.
All right.
Awesome. All right.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. Have a great one, everybody.
Bye all.